Thank you very much for joining. Today presenting you the adjusted certification process, the documents that are necessary, and then whenever you have questions, you can ask them. Feel free to interrupt me when you think it's necessary, or just collect your questions and we'll have a question section afterwards. So just to remind you where we are, we Carbon Standards International, we offer quality certification, WBC and EBC, and we also offer climate services to be certified. And today we are looking at the Global Artisan C-Sync standard, which is part of our Global C-Sync program. We have been approached by many of our customers and also by the market as such, and it became clear that we should adjust our public documentation for the projects a little bit, because C-Syncs or carbon sinks in general, they are depending very much on the trust of the people, and therefore you're working with a very trustworthy and recognized standard already, but there was the demand to have a little more public information on it, so that other people, that everybody could gain a picture of the projects and have some information to understand what's actually going on there. So that's why we decided to introduce a project design document with a monitoring plan and a little restructuring of the certification process. So it all starts with the registration, as you know. Then there's a PDD with a monitoring plan where you also cover the eligibility criteria of a specific methodology and of working with carbon standards, and you decide, which approved methodology you're working with. In your case, it's Artisan C-Sync. Then the next step is a validation of this project design document and the issuance of a validation statement. That means that your project, your activity is in general adequate to be certified for C-Syncs with carbon standards, and the plan, how you plan to put it in practice and what you plan to monitor is all right and will lead to C-Syncs if you just perform it as you described before. So then you can start with the project implementation and the operation. You perform the monitoring as you described it in the monitoring plan. There's annual inspections and verifications, and in the end it leads to the issuance of C-Sync certificates that will be visible in the registry together with the public documentations. That's just a tiny adjustment to the process that you already know. So that's the process flow phases as you know them. Here it used to be the project plan. Now it's the project design document that contains all this information. So it contains information about your sample plan, your plans for lab analysis, and so on. So actually that's the summary document, so to say, and the steps that you need to perform to be endorsed, they still remain as they have been. And then the validation, the certification as it was before, is separated into two steps. That's the validation and the verification, where you have an on-site audit. Afterwards, you will be validated as an Artisan C-Sync project. So that's the step that we had before. Just here with the validation, just before you started the implementation. And then there will be the verification of first batches and C-Sync credits. So now, as I said, there's this project design document. That's the key document, and it replaces the project plan. And I'll just jump with you in the document and go through it in all details, so all of you know what you can expect from this document. So the document starts with a cover page where you have some explanations. There's red parts in the document that must be overwritten by you. And I just self-speaking, you know what to do there. Then there's red parts in italics that are meant to be explanations of what you as the project proponent have to provide at this place, but they usually you can replace them, but they give more explanations and are not just small words as the red parts mostly are. And then there's black parts in the document that are default entries that will apply to most of the projects, and you are free to change them, and you are highly recommended to read them, as that's the project where you describe your activities. But yeah, as I said, most of you can just leave them as they are. But if you have some specialties, or if you have some exceptions that you got granted from CSI, or if there's anything else that they don't apply to you, or you don't like the formulation whatsoever, you can change them. You're free to change them. It's your document. It's your description of the project, but you should do so in track change mode. So for the certification body, it's easier to recognize where you changed stuff. The project design document starts with a cover page where you give the name of your project, the name of the person responsible for the project, the date of this document, the methodology you are applying certification for, the project location, project start date, which is the date of contract conclusion with carbon standards, or the registration date for Global Artisan Ceasing Service, the project period, where we have no end date for Global Artisan Ceasing, but you have an annual verification, and a project summary, where you just write 2 sentences very roughly about your project, so that a person who opens this document will get a feeling about the project and some basic understanding of the project already just from the cover page. You enter here your feedstock, and down here you give the approximate impact that you expect for the first 5 years. Then we can move to the table of content. There's 6 sections or 6 chapters of this document, and the first chapter is about the general description of the project. So you'll cover the project location, the stakeholders and partners involved, a description of the baseline scenario. So what was there before you started biochar production with the aim of ceasing issuance? Then the biochar carbon sinks. What is it? How will you establish them? Project boundaries, eligibility. Why did you decide for the Artisan methodology? Why did you decide, or why are you eligible to work with carbon standards? And the additionality. Why is your project leading to additional ceasings in comparison to the business as usual or the baseline scenario? That's giving a good understanding of the project. It is always looking on the whole project. So that's the general description. You get a good feeling after reading chapter 1. You should have a good understanding what will you be doing there, and what's the general impact and general strategy behind the activity. Then there's section 2. That's the ex-ante estimate of the impact, where you give an estimation on how much these things will you be establishing within the first 5 years. That's obviously based on your business plans and your ideas and growth. And then there's the third chapter that's about technology and business cases. And here we cover some of the points that have been covered in the general description already, but here it's more about the details. Here it's about the technology. Here it's about details on the feedstock. Here it's about details on your production unit. It's everything, like all the points are looked at in detail, and you have to provide information about your digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, and so on. So that's chapter 3. That's the purpose of chapter 3. And then with chapter 1 to 3, you covered your whole project. People can gain an idea about your project. And then we come into the more technical parts regarding the C-Syncs. So chapter 4 is the monitoring plan. You describe exactly what do you want to monitor, how often do you want to monitor it, and what is the supporting documents you will have to prove to Ceres that the parameters that you stated are based on some information that you collected. So here in 4, you're not referring to one single production batch, but you're in general describing how do you want to monitor your activities and how is it feasible for you in the way you're structured. So therefore, it's necessary that you give exact information on how you will prove it in your business. And then last point is the registration of the C-Sync and the calculation of the C-Sync. Here we already provide you with the formula that are in the standard as well, and that are covered by or should be covered by the digital monitoring and reporting tools. And it's about to, most probably you don't need to change anything here because that's just following the standard, but it's the idea of this whole project is, or the whole project design document is that a person just needs to take this document and knows everything from how is the project designed till what will be taken into account for the calculation of the C-Sync values. And then, so here it's about the calculation where you use all the data, all the parameters that have been monitored here. And then there is a public consultation section where you state whether there has been comments on the public consultation based on this project design document. I'll show you in a second how this works. So after we had the overview of the document, I'm just going with you through the whole document and show you how it looks and what you have to do where. So here, as I said, so now we start with chapter 1. It's the purpose and the general description of the project. And the first section is more or less the same than on the cover page. So again, you just start to explain what in general are you doing. And then you give a short overview about your baseline and you tell what will be the use of the biochar. And if it's applicable to you, you also select this sentence so that you want to use it as a construction material or a consumer product. But for most of you, the first sentence with the soil application will be applicable. Then the next section is about the project location. You give information on where the project takes place, provide the GPS locations, give an information where you want to or where you will provide information on additional plants that you might establish. And then you provide a map where you indicate the mentioned regions so that it's easier to understand for the readers. The next section is about the stakeholders and partners involved. You just describe who takes part in this project, and you visualize the chain from C-Sync manager till the Artisan biochar producer with an organigram. Afterwards, we have a more in-depth description of the baseline scenario. So as if you remember up here, it was just 2 sentences to give a rough estimation or rough idea about the baseline. Now you talk a little more about the baseline. So what is the situation before? What are the points that are interesting? Because these are the ones that you'll change with the project. Then here we have a section about the biochar carbon sinks, where we already did the work for you and described what is biochar and how can you use them as carbon sink. And the project boundaries are also set because that's how the standard is designed. So it covers scope 1 and 2 and the transport emissions from scope 3. Now we have an interesting point because that's new for you. That's the eligibility criteria, where you have to tick all the boxes because that only the Artisan C-Sync certification is applicable to you. It covers the production of the biochar according to the global artisan ceasing conditions. You have to confirm that the farmers and artisan biochar producers are not certified under any other methodology. You confirm that your project has social impact as well, as you compensate all the parties fairly and transparent. Your project is located in low or middle income countries, and the biochar production does not exceed the threshold values of 100 cubic meters per year for single farmer or 1,500 cubic meters per year for Artisan Pro. And you use low-tech production units. The next one is the additionality. Here also we gave you some template, and it describes why are the things that you create additional to the business as usual scenario. Why do you need the certification scheme? Why do you need the compensation for the C-Sync services that you provide in order to run the project? So here, as I said, you're free to change it, but it should be applicable to you as well. So then that was the part for the general description of the project. Now we are at the section or in the chapter for the ex-ante estimate of the impact. If you're already producing, you can use the values for the first years that you have been producing. It's about the amount of feedstock, and the amount of established permanent ceasings. And in the middle, the temporary ceasings, they refer to the semi-permanent fraction of the biochar. So you just enter the real values if you have been producing already for your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 first years of production. And for the future, you estimate how much amount of feedstock you'll use and what will be the established permanent ceasings. And we'll check whether you understood the conversion factor between feedstock to permanent ceasings in tons of CO2 equivalents. Now we are at the third chapter. That's, as I said, more detailed on the technology and business cases. So few parts will be repetition of the first section, but here now it's more technical, it's more going into detail. And we have prepared some text again, and you can see that there's always 3 boxes. So there's here one box, then the next box, and the third box. And you have to decide which one is the one applicable for you, as the first box is always for a single ceasing farmer. The second one is for the ceasing cooks, and then there is the version for the Artisan Pro. So you have to delete whichever is not relevant for you, and to read the text for the one that is relevant to you and see whether everything in there is correct, and if not, change it and adopt it. So that was about who is the producer. Then we have the next section about the training. You know the requirements from the standard, and there is an internal, or you can have an internal training protocol that you have to provide to us, but it's not public, as you just refer to it in here. Then the next section is about the feedstock. You describe in detail where do you get your feedstock from, what is the transport distances for the feedstock, what is the business, or how is the feedstock used at the moment, and stuff like this. And then there's also the methane emissions during the storage that you have to mitigate with complying to to the regulations on how to store the feedstock, and also give information about the water content and how you train your producers to understand how the water content is. Then the next one is about the production unit. Again, here we have the different permitted production units and default text for them. You have to delete the ones that are not relevant to you and the one that is relevant to you. Review the description if that's applicable to you. And then you provide a flowchart as well about the structure, about your working structure. So next one is about the suitability of artisan biochar for agriculture. And here again, we have a text, and the sample plan that you have been providing to carbon standards, or that you have to provide, is just referred to. So you can also include it in here if you want to, but you don't need to. You can also tell, okay, it was presented to carbon standards. Here it's about the application and the trait of the biochar. For most of you, the geological ceasing, so the biochar application to the soil, will be the relevant one. And there can be also others that you have to add here then, for example, the temporary ceasings. Then we are looking at the methane emission compensation. Again, just check which of these are relevant to you, delete the others, and review the text. Next one is about the digital monitoring and reporting verification tool. You describe which exact DMRV tool are you using, and either it's one already known to carbon standards, or you have to have the parallel endorsement process for your DMRV system and describe how it works and what's the name of the DMRV system and how it, if it was endorsed by carbon standards already. Here, as I said, you just give an outlook on if you plan some scale up or if you plan to use different feedstock. So there is an idea on how the project develops in the future. And then the internal control system was presented to Ceres, and also, yeah, so exactly. So there is the internal control system that is part of the endorsement process at the moment already. And here we just refer to the ECS that you prepared and had to present to Ceres. So that's all about the details of how to establish the project as was described on a broader scale in chapter 1. And now, as you see, we've been going into detail on all the different aspects. And then now we are finished with the details on how you put your project into practice. And now we are looking into the monitoring plan. So here, again, that's all the data that you enter in the DMRV system. And the DMRV system must be endorsed by carbon standards. And now you describe what is the data that you will monitor and how will you monitor them. So here in the first row, there's the parameter, and in the first column, there's the parameter, and the second column, there's the monitoring frequency, and in the third column, there is the source of the data. So and you go through all these parameters, and whenever you think, okay, that's a parameter that's not important for me, for example, if we go down here, there might be other parameters that you need to measure, or there is I don't know, at some point there might be the fertilizer usage or some things. So if there is information that you think is not applicable to you and not required for you, you enter not applicable in the second and the third column. And for all the parameters that are relevant for you, you check whether the given monitoring frequency is all right for you, and you give the information where you'll monitor this data, or what you can provide as a proof for this data. For example, up here you have the producers list, or the proof of a successful participation in an artisan biochar workshop. And there you have to describe whether you have an internal book where you describe it, or whether you have some participation protocols that are signed, or if you have photos documenting this. So here you just give us information about how the internal documentation in your project, in your organization works like. And then we separated it in general data, and then in the Artisan biochar production. And here again, you see that they are the boxes. You need to fill only one of it. And you always check the monitoring frequency and the source of the data and provide it. And then we covered all the data that shall be monitored. And as just to remind you, it's not about the data already, it's just about the plan, how you will monitor the data. It's not referring to one specific monitoring period. Then there is another section dealing with the compensation of the fossil emissions and the methane emissions. And then we are at chapter 5, where it's about the requirements for the registration and how the calculation of the C-Sync is performed. So yeah, that's the document that you have to fill. And I'll swap to my presentation again. We had a look at the project design document now. And the second step will be that you hand it in for desk review to Cereset. And at the same time, we start public consultation with your PDD. We publish it on the CSI webpage. And there, that's the public consultation that we've been speaking about. And you saw that at the bottom of the document, there was this public consultation chapter. And here, that's something that you only fill after the public consultation, at the point when the public consultation is over. And you describe if there have been comments, if you took this comment into account, and justify why you did not take it in account. For example, because it's out of the project scope. And at the end, you'll have already feedbacks on the desk review of chapter 1 to 5. And we have the parallel consultation, public consultation on the CSI webpage. And at the point of the on-site inspection or at the end of the public consultation of 30 days, whatever ends first, whatever ends at a later point, you'll then get the validation report, because the validation from Ceres is separated in a desk review and an on-site inspection to see whether whatever you stated is correct and adequate. So these two steps have to happen. Here in this step, you'll most probably receive some feedback. You have to reply on it and adjust the document. And whenever this process is completed, you get the validation report for your project. With that, you are then allowed to start with the project implementation and the operation. And you document all your parameters according to the monitoring plan in your DMRV tool. And you have to provide, or there will be a monitoring report again that has the same cover page as the PDD and an annex that's an export from your DMRV tool. It might look different. According to your DMRV tool, it should cover all the parameters that are given in the monitoring plan. And then, yeah, that's what we just had. So you have the project implementation and you monitor all of these steps and enter them in the DMRV tool, take the export and add it to this cover page. The verification will happen at Ceres. So they check your monitoring data, whether they are in line with the monitoring plan that was part of the PDD. You'll get some findings, as you are used to at the moment already after the inspection. You have to reply to these findings and solve them. And in the end, there will be the verification report. So after you have the verification, there can be the issuance of the C-Syncs, and they will be entered in the registry with their persistency curve and the emission backpack. That's how a certificate looks in our registry. And here in the section public files, we'll upload the project design document, the validation report, the monitoring report, the finding report, and the verification report. And that's it. Now we are open to your questions.
Any other questions at the moment? If not, I just remind you, you can always reach out to us through emails if questions coming along. We're also here to support you when it comes to the PDD as good as we can. I just want to remind you as well that it's not Carbon Standards that is validating the PDDs. It will be CERES. Just that you take care of that. And if there's no other questions, thank you for listening and your time. And we're looking forward to read through your PDDs and go on this journey together with you, and hopefully having many, many Artisan biochar projects and PDDs in our registry soon. Thanks a lot, and enjoy your evening, afternoon, the entire day, depending on where you are at the moment.